and I think that's kind of the right choice that a lot of creatives need to learn when it's the right time to make that jump. Because you can get kind of caught behind and bottled up in this bottleneck of fear of, well, I'm going to jump in the wrong spot, or I'm going to fall on the other side of this, or it's just not going to be good. But, so you have to take that leap. And then I immediately felt better. I immediately felt like I could do this. Of course, there come other points where you have to, ask yourself more questions, or you have to bolster your courage again. But, once you're moving, the process gets smoother. But it isn't really a choice so much as it's just a way of being. When I'm not creating in all of these different mediums, that's when I start to get overwhelmed or frustrated or sad. When I'm engaged in multiple projects and I'm letting myself create and I have all of these outlets, that's when I feel most alive.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 417 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with C.L. Fors. Now, C.L. Fors lives and breathes stories in multiple mediums: the written word, illustration in watercolor, acrylic, digital, and ink, and the creation of custom jewelry and other artifacts of story. She is an artist with a myriad of interests and experiences that inform and flavor her writing and illustrating. With her husband, Jason P. Crawford, Cherrie co-founded the indie publishing house Epitome Press. They also, just this week, by the way, celebrated 21 years together. So congratulations to Cherrie and Jason. A multipotentialite, mother, author, and adventurer, Cherrie has a passion for research-based science fiction, fantasy, horror, and speculative fiction. At various times in her life, she's been a film actor, military intelligence linguist, a doula, childbirth educator, student midwife for birthing, as well as a belly dancer. But today, because, oh my God, that's so exhausting, she's done so much. Today, we're going to be focusing mostly on her writing and her work as an artist. And that interview is coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by my affiliate link to Manuscript Report. If you're looking for a way to create the bunch of marketing assets for your book, Manuscript Report has the answer. A few minutes after loading your manuscript, they'll send you a report about 21 to 25 pages that offers a number of valuable assets to help with marketing your book, including sales copy, a list of potential target audiences along with brief pitches for each of those audiences, an overview of the tropes that appear in your book, the themes that are in your manuscript, comp authors and titles with details on how your book is both similar to and yet unique from the ones that are listed, a list of handy Amazon keywords and categories to use in your book listing, a sample press release about your book, and more. I'm sure you're going to find it extremely valuable and save you hours of marketing efforts, because you can have copy that you can use potentially for social media or even for enhancing your sales copy or even your listing for your book. And you can get $5 off your report by using the code MARK5 at checkout. That's MARK, the numeral 5. And if you use the affiliate link listed for this episode at starkreflections.ca, or you go to bit.ly/manuscript report, I'll also get a small cut with your purchase. And that is Manuscript Report. It's using analytical AI on your manuscript. They do not store it. They do not keep it. They provide this report to get back to you to help save you time in marketing efforts. I know I've used them on numerous manuscripts of mine, as well as some manuscripts from my friends. And again, just a reminder to my patrons, there's an opportunity for you to get access to manuscript reports as well. Don't forget to fill out that form before the end of May 2025. And that is a read from the sponsor for this episode. I do want to say a huge shout out and thank you to those who support this podcast over at patreon.com/darkreflections, as well as those who support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. I do appreciate your support, and there is a new audio episode for patrons that I uploaded just a couple days ago or yesterday, I can't remember, sometime relatively recently, where I shared a bit of an oops that I made when I was loading a short story that was a professionally narrated short story, but I tried to leverage some AI voice of mine in the file instead of doing what's known as a callback. A callback? A pickup. It's called the pickup. Pickup where you go back and re-record something that you got wrong, maybe pronounced it wrong or you had a verbal typo, etc. I got caught by trying to use that shortcut. And here I thought that it would be a valuable shortcut. But then the details of that and the samples are in the audio feed for patrons. And thanks again to all of those who support this podcast at patreon.com/starkreflections. And now, among recent comments, Lois Bartholomew, via a message on Patreon, said, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed listening to your keynote speech, which I had shared with patrons about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, I can't remember. Lois says, thanks for posting the recording. Thank you, Lois. I'm glad you appreciated it. I'm glad you got some value out of that. You can leave comments for any episode over at starkreflections.ca. You can tag me on social media. You can message me directly. I do love hearing from you, hearing feedback about episodes and what you're reflecting on when you are listening. And that's it for the comments section. I'm going to play the bumper and get to a probably extended personal update. In terms of personal update, I have a new book out I've been talking about, but I haven't really talked about it in detail. Now, over the past 6 months or so, I have co-authored a book with Maddie Dalrymple. Maddie and I co-authored a book before. This was Taking the Short Tack, and it actually originated when Maddie asked me some really good questions and some comments or an email that she had sent me for this podcast years ago, and it was probably before she started her own The Indie Author podcast, and she was asking me about strategies for short fiction that turned into a full episode, and then we readapted more of that work into the book Taking the Short Tack. But we were having lunch in Vegas in November. I got to meet her awesome husband, Wade, and after lunch she mentioned the concept of this book, and I thought it would be great. So we now have this book listed for pre-order, and it's called The Podcast Guest Playbook, Turning Conversations into Connections and Community. Now, in this book, we talk about how to build an engaged community, how to forge authentic connections, and spark unforgettable conversations as a podcast guest. So thus, you as an author, what can you offer and what can you put together for strategies in terms of your offer so that you can be an engaging guest on different podcasts. And Maddie and I rely on our, combined, we probably have several decades of experience as podcast hosts and guests. And that book is coming out June 11th, 2025, and you can find it at books2read.com/podcast guest playbook. It's going to be available in ebook. I know the ebook is listed now. The print book should be available by June 11th as well, and you can find the links eventually. The print books links will be added to that Books to Read. But I'm pretty excited about this one because it was great to go back in, dig into our own archives in our minds and memories of experiences that both of us have had, as both hosts and guests on various podcasts. So it was a really fun time to put together. And it's funny, at the same time, Maddie has put together a book that she has co-authored with Michael Laron. And their previous book, From Page to Platform, was fantastic. I loved it. I wrote the foreword to it because I think it's a fantastic book. And this new one is on collaboration, and I believe that their book comes out June 1st. I'll have links to both of those, of course, over at starkreflections.ca. Now, in terms of other personal news, next week's episode, I'm going to see if I can get that pre-recorded before I hit the road, because I'm going to be hitting the road next week. Or maybe I'm just going to do it from a hotel room. We'll see how that goes. It could be one of those rambling reflections from the road. But next week, I'm going to be heading out on the road to Fredericton, New Brunswick. And I'm going to be attending WordSpring 2025, hosted by the Writers Federation of New Brunswick. And I'll be doing a 2-hour talk and workshop on exploring various publishing options. I'm so excited to interact with this writers group. I'm so excited because I've never been to New Brunswick before. The only eastern province in Canada I've been to, I mean, Ontario and Quebec are sort of eastern, but I'm talking about east beyond that, right? Like the actual coast of Canada, which extends quite a bit further than, New York State, etc. So I've never been to New Brunswick before. I've only been to Nova Scotia, and mostly in Nova Scotia, mostly in Halifax and the surrounding area, the area, within an hour's drive or 2 hours drive of Halifax. And so I thought, instead of just flying to Fredericton, I'd drive, because this would allow me to see more of Quebec and New Brunswick, more of New Brunswick than just Fredericton, which I'm sure is a great city, but why not see more of the beautiful eastern provinces that we have in this country? So the original plan was to start making my way and staying one night with my best friend Steve in Ottawa, Ontario, before continuing on the journey. Because there's I think it's only 4 or 5 hours to get to Ottawa, and then that would cut it down to about 10-hour drive, I think, from there. But anyways, when Steve said, yeah, sure, of course, and then he started thinking about it, and he said, hey, why doesn't he come along and he can do the driving? And so we're turning this into a week-long buddy road trip. So I'm combining some work with having some fun with Steve. And because he'll be driving, I'll have my portable Wi-Fi with me as we're driving. I'll be able to get some work done while he's driving in the car when we're not listening to music, air drumming and singing along to Rush and the other music we're going to be doing, or just farting around as we do. So I'm going to be leaving Wednesday morning for Ottawa, where Steve and I are going to meet up with another one of our lifelong buddies, John. Go out for dinner and drinks. And then Thursday morning, we're going to do the first leg of the journey. And then we're going to be staying at a small city called Rivière-du-Loup, which is east of Quebec City. Now, I've never driven past Montreal on my own adventures through Quebec before. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And Rivière-du-Loup is pretty much right on the St. Lawrence. And then from there, Friday, we kind of head southeast. And it's a half-day drive to get to Fredericton. And we should arrive in time for me to attend some of the open mic and book launch readings and the New Brunswick Writing Competition literary soiree reception, and then the award readings. And then Saturday morning, I'm working at the conference, and hopefully I'll get to see Kathy Mack, who lives nearby and is going to be attending the event. Now, longtime listeners to the podcast will remember Kathy's been a previous guest several times. You've heard her voice several times on the show, and she's a regular commenter and a longtime patron of the show. So it'd be so awesome to get to meet Kathy in person. Now, on Sunday, Steve and I are going to be heading down to St. John, New Brunswick, which I guess among exploring the city and the Bay of Fundy, I've never been to the Bay of Fundy, we're going to hit some local breweries. Now, New Brunswick, St. John, New Brunswick, is the home of the last major Canadian brewery, founded in 1867 and still owned by actual Canadians. Now, back in my university days, my two main go-to beers were Molson Export. Now, Molson is sadly no longer Canadian, and Moosehead. Now, they're both easy drinking lagers. They virtually taste like almost any other lager out there. Okay, that's the reality of most of those bland lagers that are like, the Budweiser style kind of things. But I have a special affinity for both. Now, my dad drank Molson Export. My uncle Leslie, Mark Leslie, I'm named after him. My dad drank Export. My uncle Leslie drank Export, and then that. So I still have an affinity for that beer because of that, a nostalgia for it. And then there's also this nostalgia I have about the Moosehead brand that I like. My dad and my uncle, they hunted moose up north, and that's just part of the northern experience. And I always identified with that brand because of the moose and the outdoors and the nature and stuff like that. So it'll be fun to go visit the brewery. Maybe see if we can go on a tour, at least visit the tap room, get to the brewery. And then it looks like there's so many great microbreweries in the area as well. Now, also, while we're in town, we're going to be meeting up with Mallory and Jill Cooper, who recently relocated back to Canada. Mallory reminded me that she actually grew up in Saskatchewan, has been living in the States for a long time, but then recently relocated back to Canada, which is a much safer place currently, at least. We didn't screw up our election the way the U.S. screwed up their election last November. So far Canada's gonna be safe. But it'll be great to catch up with Mal and Jill. Haven't seen Mal since I think I had the pleasure of introducing Mal for one of her talks at Author Nation in November. So that was the last time I saw Mal. And I can't remember if Joe was there, but I think Jill might have been in town. But it's been a long time since I've actually had a conversation with Jill. So that'll be fun to see the two of them. So after that, Steve and I are off to Moncton, which isn't too far from St. John. And near Moncton is the Lefebvre National Monument. No relation, of course, to me, but this is a spot that Kathy Mack recommended that I visit because I'm going to be so close. I figured, why the heck not? Why not go check it out, get some pictures, and there's like a cafe and a theater, and it looks like a really cool place. And I hope they speak some English, but because my French is horrible. But I think it'll be fun to check out. And then afterwards, we're kind of leaving it up in the air. Now I do have to be back. I have some stuff that's going on, like presentations that I'm doing on the following weekend, so I have to be back. But we're leaving it up in the air on where we're going to go next. But looks like it's going to be a drive in New Brunswick up the sort of eastern and northern coastline, and then back along the St. Lawrence Seaway, back through the rest of New Brunswick, back through Quebec, and on our way back to Ontario, probably stopping 1 or 2 days on the way home and just exploring and having some good times. Now, Steve and I have been friends since we were kids, and we started to get really close as friends probably around the age of about 14 or so. And again, our entire lives, we've maintained a connection. Like, sometimes go like a full year without seeing one another. But in the last several years, I particularly as I'm getting older, I'm doing my best to spend more time with my friends, people who've always been important to me, rather than letting it go years without seeing them. So that's going to be a really fun time. I'll probably be reflecting on some of that. And again, should be just so interesting. Again, with the thought that I know Liz and I aren't going to be moving out west for several years at this point is the plan now. But just the thought of moving all the way to the far side of the country makes me want to explore more of this part of the country now that I have easy access to it in a vehicle. In a vehicle? in a vehicle. I'm not going to edit that one out. I'm just going to leave it in there because it's fun to trip on my tongue. But anyways, that is my long extended personal update. There's also writing stuff going on. There's also presentations and work I'm doing with Drafted Digital as always going on. But that's it for my personal update. I'm going to roll the bumper and we're going to get into this wonderful interview with CL4's, but Cherrie, of course, I call her Cherrie in the interview, but you're going to have a grand time chatting with Cherrie about her writing, about her illustration, and even about how long she has identified as this adventurous, entrepreneurial, uh, I mean, I'm going to use the term artist just to cover all of the incredible art she creates, whether it's writing or illustrations or jewelry or any of the other things she does. She is a real renaissance. She's one of those kinds of women, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy listening to her as much as I enjoyed getting a chance to chat in detail with her for this podcast. And that's coming up right after this bumper. Cherrie, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, I first have to say congratulations on your recent win as an illustrator of the future. So let's start off with that. So I recently saw you in Hollywood on stage in a spectacular dress with a cape. It was perfectly superheroish you. It was just perfect. Winning
Thank
an
you so much.
award for Writers of the Future. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So I actually won as one of the illustrator winners this year. You know, the win was actually in 2024, the award ceremony just this past April. And we got to meet in Hollywood with all of the judges and have this whole week culminating in the gala and award ceremony. So I'm one of the 12 illustrator winners for volume 41 of Writers of the Future this year.
So how does that work? So you submitted a bunch of different, like, so as an illustrator, you had to submit a bunch of different illustrations. Was it just from your own portfolio, or were there specific guidelines?
Yeah, that's right. So basically, you want to submit work that's representative of what you would like to do as your illustration career.
Okay.
So I actually have been entering the contest I've been entering the contest as a writer and an illustrator for quite a long time, since about 2016.
Okay.
And at a certain point, I started entering every single quarter. And at first, I was doing 3 new paintings and entering them
Every
every quarter of
quarter.
the year.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Um, and at a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm gonna just switch one out, especially as I started to get a larger portfolio. So I would just do 1 new painting, switch it out each quarter. And you can paint anything that you want to paint, the things, and it's better to paint things that really interest you. But you want to paint things that are illustration. They're not looking for portraiture, they're not looking for landscape, they're looking for art that tells a story.
Right. Okay. All right. That's interesting. And that kind of that kind of alludes to something I was going to ask you later, but I think this is a good segue for it. You have said, and I quote, "Story is how I process life and express myself, and illustration is how I connect." So, stories in there in both elements, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, the way that those 2 mediums exist in my mind, it's almost synonymous. There are some ideas that do want to be paintings, and there are some that want to be written in word. But oftentimes, I'm experiencing both of them simultaneously, oftentimes. And so I'll write things and then I'll do illustrations for the same story idea, or vice versa.
Oh, okay.
Paintings, yeah. So I have paintings that I haven't written the story for yet, but the stories are there in my head, and I'll write them one day. So,
I love this fact. So you just recently celebrated as a winner of the Writers and Illustrators of the Future as one of the illustrators. So let's go back to that for just a second. So you submitted these, obviously the judges, and there's a panel of judges from across the industry as various artists and designers, etc., from across the industry, and then they determined, okay, you're one of the winners. What happens then? Like, because that's when you're actually teamed up sort of with a writer winner?
yes, that's right. So after you've been declared a winner, you sign a contract with them, and they assign you a story. And the story is from one of the winning writers from the same year, the same volume. And once you get that story, then you need to read it and you translate that into a new illustration.
Okay. And as I understand it, there's a special day when all the writers and winners are together for that one week in Hollywood. There's one day where you are the reveal happens, I guess. The
Yeah.
writers get to see. So how did that go? And well, what story did you get, and how did that experience go?
So I illustrated A World of Repetitions by Seth Atwater Jr. And I mean, first of all, it's a phenomenal story. It's a time loop story, but it's unique in that everybody in the world is experiencing this time loop and aware of it. So what it really ends up being about is how do you learn to survive and thrive when you're no longer able to make any kind of progress? Everything is reset every day.
Right. Yeah.
So it's actually a really funny story. I met Seth the day before the big reveal, and I met him on a run because TJ Knight took a few of us up on a run into the Hollywood Hills.
Right.
And so we're on this run, and one of the other authors started talking to me and asked me, so which story did you illustrate? And I told them, well, A World of Repetitions by Seth Atwater. And and she turns to me and she looks behind us and says, "Oh, that's Seth right behind you." And I turned and I looked at Seth and I was like, "Oh, well, of course we're meeting on a run because the main characters in his story met on a run."
Oh my God.
Yeah. So,
Oh, that's
um,
fantastic. Oh, I've got to get in on that next year. I didn't know that there was a day where people went for a run in the Hollywood Hills. I've done that by myself. It'd be more fun to go with a group.
you should have been there. Yeah. We need to get some more runs together.
Awesome.
So when we did the big reveal, I knew Seth, but I didn't know what he would think of the painting.
Oh,
So I was, of course, nervous, and
yeah, yeah,
but he knew it immediately. He walked up to it, and he did not walk past, and he just kept looking at it. And
yeah.
he said that I made him notice and appreciate things about his story and fall in love with his story again.
Oh,
And so that meant a lot to me. Yeah.
oh, that is magnificent. I love the fact that I mean you have the artist's soul, but you also have the writer's soul, and they're kind of intermingled because you can express them in different ways. But you have so you've won this obviously this prize for your illustration. You have a four, is it a four book science fiction series?
Yes, it's a four-book science fiction series. I'd consider it epic science fiction, the
Okay.
scope of the story across those four books. Yeah.
And what is that? Is it Mars? What's the story
Yes.
about?
So, it's a story about people. It's a story about reclaiming self-determination.
Okay.
Um, the world is in a state where we have a world government. We're 300 years in the future. And a lot of the world's problems that we think about nowadays have been solved by this world government and by this team of scientists. So the world's problems have been solved by making it so that reproduction is no longer in the hands of individuals. And eugenics is another thing that has been used in
Right.
order to try to solve the world's problems. And our cast of characters in this story have been given the opportunity to colonize Mars. And when they go to Mars, that gives them the task of determining, are they going to follow in the footsteps and remain under the control of the world government on Earth? Or is this an opportunity for them to decide the future of humankind?
Okay.
And
Right.
yeah, so this is a four-book series
So
where we colonize Mars and we take a close look at these kind of questions.
awesome. Awesome. So as a creative person, I love the way that the creativity you're inspired by some sort of idea and it can go story, it can go illustration, it can go both.
Yes.
But you also have another project that actually does both, right?
That's right, yes. I'm working on a graphic novel, and it's a graphic novel based off of a short story. I wrote it as a short story initially,
Okay.
and at first I really wasn't sure exactly what medium I was going to tell it in. I was like, is this a children's story? Is this because I knew it was going to have images,
Right.
and so I was like, okay, so is it a picture book? And
Yeah.
then I didn't start it because it didn't feel right. And I was like, this this is a little bit darker and it's a little bit deeper, and this is
Okay.
not really a children's book. I think that there are children who will appreciate it. It's not overly violent, but it has a little more depth and a wider audience than that. And I came across some graphic novels that I started looking at the artwork in it and the way that the story was told, and I was like, oh, that's what this is. Okay, this is a graphic novel.
Okay.
So the story is written, and I actually have two-thirds of the panels all drawn out.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, yeah. I think I have like 36, somewhere between 36 and 40 of them, fully drawn out.
Okay.
And I have one of the paintings, a full spread painting completed. And so that I'm just working through that process. But if you know anything about my watercolor style, I'm doing this in full color watercolor, and it's with the amount of layers and depth and painstaking process that those kind of watercolors take. So I'm just making my way through the paintings now.
Well, I can only imagine the difference between, capturing like you did for Seth's story or other things that spark your imagination, capturing that moment or capturing that image or the essence of the feel. But now
Yeah.
you're doing like the panels, the story. It's not storyboard, but very similar, where you've got the story rolling out in a narrative format. How different was that? Like, and how did you learn how to do the graphic novel format? Because it's completely different than just capturing, elements from the story.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It is very different. And it's definitely been a learning process. I didn't just, decide to do it and then already have the skill set, certainly. I did research on graphic novels that fit the kind of style that I was going for.
Right.
I read a whole bunch of them. I kind of analyzed and picked apart the way that the story unfolds in them.
Hmm.
And then I also collected several different books from friends on how to do comics and how to do graphic novels.
Okay.
And so and then I read them cover to cover. And I'm used to being self-taught. I didn't go to college for art, not because I'm against that, but I just really didn't, that wasn't the path my life took.
Right.
And yeah, so I've just always been self-taught up until the recent years of my life. So that process is kind of natural for me. I'm like, oh, I need to learn how to do this. I'm gonna find the tools and I'm gonna teach myself, and then I'm going to just dive in. And there came a certain point where I was like, okay, you've researched, you've figured out how other people do this. I think the job now is to look within yourself and decide how do I do this?
Right.
How do I make a graphic novel? And then just jump. And 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 that's, where I then took off. And I think that's kind of the right choice that a lot of creatives need to learn when it's the right time to make that jump. Because you can get kind of caught behind and bottled up in this bottleneck of fear of, well, I'm going to jump in the wrong spot, or I'm going to fall on the other side of this, or it's just not going to be good. But so you have to take that leap. And then I immediately felt better. I immediately felt like I could do this. You know, of course, there come other points where you have to, you know, ask yourself more questions, or you have to bolster your courage again. But once you're moving, the process gets smoother.
Oh, wow. So as a writer with way more ideas than I have time to work on them, I'm mostly focused on, one medium, right? Like text-based story, nonfiction and fiction. Uh, how you have this whole other channel of inspiration with visual, right? Like visual arts. And so it's kind of like, not like I have trouble trying to find the time to write all the things that come to mind. I can only imagine that that's got to be double as frustrating for you, because you're like, you only have 24 hours in a day and you probably have twice as many ideas, if not more.
Yes. I have come to terms with the fact that it is oftentimes a frustrating way to exist, but it isn't really a choice so
Okay.
much as it's just a way of being. When I'm not creating in all of these different mediums, that's when I start to get overwhelmed or frustrated or sad. When I'm engaged in multiple projects and I'm letting myself create and I have all of these outlets, that's when I feel most alive. But yes, I do get frustrated. And those are opportunities for me to take a look at am I having realistic expectations of myself? And do I need to take a closer look at how I'm organizing my time and my energy? Because we have so much more time in the day than we think we do. You know, I know we all struggle with in this time period, we all struggle with the phone and with the social media, especially since we need to go on it for things like, marketing and just connecting with each other. So you can't just put it away and never use it. But you know how easy it is to go in and check a message from friends and then you realize you're still on there several minutes later. So sometimes the answer is to take a closer look at what you're doing with your time and your energy and whether or not you're being too hard on yourself. Anytime I am getting overwhelmed by my number of projects, it's a mindset thing. Because if I'm just working on one, I feel great. If I'm judging or making a mountain out of them in my mind, then that's when I get frustrated. That's when I start to feel stress over it. And when I judge myself, you're not getting them done fast enough. You're not doing enough. That's when it gets hard. So.
So let's go back to the beginning. What did you discover first? Your inclination for story, for writing, or your inclination for art, or did they emerge simultaneously? How did that, what's the origin story here?
I cannot remember a time when I wasn't doing both and a
Really?
number of other crafts as well. I've
Okay.
always expressed myself in all of those ways. When I was a child, I was painting, drawing, crafting, writing, and publishing. When I was when
Publishing
I
as
was
a child. Okay.
well, when I was about 9 years old, I really wanted this cockatiel that I saw in a pet shop. And I went home and my dad said, "Well, if you can earn the money, you can have it, right?" So I went home and I was like, "What can I do? How can I make money?" And I was like, "Well, I make art. I write things and I make art." So I started publishing a magazine. I drew pictures and I wrote stories and I wrote poetry and I had this little typewriter and I typed up stories and I actually hired my siblings to write stories and do comics and I even had pages where there were recipes and there was made up local news. And I put all of these pages together and then I gave them to my dad and he photocopied them at work and he ran off like 50 to 100 of these things and I stapled them and I sold them door to door.
Wow.
And I did this for a few years. I never earned enough for that cockatiel because it was $2,000, but I did publish my own magazine for a number of years.
So
So
one has to ask, are there copies of these floating around that we may be selling for thousands of dollars on eBay now? Because, you're an award-winning illustrator.
I mean,
Soon,
yeah,
probably soon to be award-winning
yeah,
author, right?
yeah. I don't know if anybody who bought them ever kept them, but I have copies. I have copies of quite a few of them.
Oh
So
man. I would love to see those sometime. That sounds like a lot of fun.
I will bring them to Superstars and show you.
So you, so you started at the age of 9, you were publishing a magazine, with that sort of that entrepreneurial spirit. But you're now, you had mentioned education before. You're actually continuing to advance your skills. You're in a program right now, I hear?
That's right, yes. So I'm about to finish my master's in publishing from Western Colorado University.
Okay.
And I've also enrolled in the continued path, getting my MFA in genre fiction. So,
Oh, you're doing the double. That's kind of
yeah,
fun.
yes,
Wow. Okay. Awesome. So you get that all of that. But again, you're taking these years of so wait, you started at the age of 9,
yeah.
the illustration, publishing a magazine, writing stories. I guess the other thing is you're still eligible to submit fiction to writers of the future, right? You're not eligible anymore because you won as an artist. So that's, but are you still writing stories and submitting to that contest?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is definitely my goal is to be a double winner, to win with both. And it's not a matter of saying how many awards I have or, being an overachiever in some kind of way. It's really just that I want to represent to the world who I really am at my core. I don't really see myself as just one. I'm not just an illustrator. That's kind of an incomplete picture of me. I'm not just a writer. I'm both. I intend to continue to put out work that is both for my viewers and my readers and just anybody who's interested in that.
And of course, when the graphic novel comes out, that's a perfect example of the
Yes.
talent on both sides of the art and the because that's kind of a rare thing. There's very few writers that actually do writers and illustrators who actually do both of those things, I imagine.
Yeah, I don't know very many. I don't know of very many, and I never really had any mentors. And I heard a lot of when I was growing up, oh, well, you need to pick one, or you can't be everything, or you need to do fewer things. And not necessarily from my parents, but just what society says. It kind of makes people uncomfortable when you're doing a lot of things at once. And yeah, I did need to learn how to focus in because when I was younger, it was definitely harder to not fly off on every new little project. But for me, narrowing focus was I'm an illustrator and I'm a writer and well, I'm a publisher, but those are kind of a marriage, you know, those three.
Do you use CL4s? Do you use CL4s for both your art as well as your writing, or do you differentiate in any way?
I do, yes. I use CL4s for everything I do now. I was differentiating and using my married name previously for my art, but then I realized no, I really just want to be one person that does all these things.
Right. Okay. All right. Joyce Carol Oates never picked a genre, right? Just has written almost every genre imaginable. So there you got this, you got this. This is fun. Also, you don't have to manage two different profiles. Right? You can.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
one factor. Yeah. Well, and like I feel like I kind of realized that when I met James A. Owen. And he's probably the first mentor figure that I've had, regarding being an illustrator and a writer, because I saw what he was doing and met him and I was just like, oh wow, okay, it can be done. Now I see this actually being done by someone who is, you know, extremely successful and he's just him and everybody knows him as everything that he does.
Yeah, of course. Fiction, nonfiction, art, all the things. Yeah. All right. So how do you, in your creative life, how do you divide up the time? So, for example, like I usually try to get my creative energy, my writing done as early as I can in the day because once I pick up the phone, once I check my email, my day's shot, right? I'm all over, I'm ping-ponging all over the world and I'm not focused anymore on, so I have to get it done first thing in the morning. How do you decide, like, are you going to work on art? Are you going to work on writing? Where does that come from, and do you pre-plan any of that?
Well, I've had to learn that I do need to go with the flow, because I have 4 kids and that job doesn't stop. And so I use the time that works best for each of the tasks on any given day. I find that with my painting, I can usually work on that when everybody's around, and I can work on it when I'm also the only parent there. So I can be painting, and then, with watercolor, it doesn't matter if the paint dries, I can get up and I can take care of things. I can watercolor and cook at the same time, those kind of things. It's not ideal, but it works. When I'm working on a deadline or working on a really big project, then yeah, I'll do binge painting sessions where I'm off limits and I might stay up, to all hours and get projects done. But other than that, the painting kind of fits in with our daily life. In fact, my painting studio is our dining room. So,
Oh, cool. People get to see their works in progress all the time as they walk by, right?
yes, this is true. All of my paintings are hung all over the house and in my my dining room. So, but then with writing, I really do better if I go out of the house. And sometimes I'm able to do that during the day. And even if I'm the only one here, I'll go out during the
Yeah.
day. I'm in a set location that's specifically for writing, and then I will get it done. If that doesn't happen because I had other responsibilities, then I'll just tell my husband, who's also a writer, Jason P. Crawford, I'll tell him I've got to write today. Usually I'll text him in advance. I'm going out. And I'll go to Denny's, I'll go to a coffee shop, and I'll stay there as long as I need to, and I'll get my writing done. So,
And is it on a keyboard device or are you handwriting?
oh no, not handwriting. I write on my computer. Yeah. My first novel, I thought I was going to write it by hand. I don't know. I think I was being cute and old fashioned, and I started writing it in a journal. I have maybe 8,000 words in there, and I realized at a certain point, one, I didn't know how to write yet, and I was starting over, and two, that I never wanted to do the same task again and take what
Right.
I'd written and type it into the computer. So no, it's all typed straight into the computer. I use Scrivener, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Okay. I was just curious because I thought maybe that tactile experience of touching the paper might, or maybe that triggers a different part of your brain. So,
Hands get tired, and you know what? I don't know. I think that writing on paper, that doesn't give me any kind of tactile pleasure like painting does.
right.
Um, but I'm not much of a sketch artist. I do a very little bit, but I don't get a whole lot of joy from sketching free.
Right.
But painting is different with the flow of the paint and the colors and the water, and that I definitely find the tactile experience to be part of the joy of it.
Right. So you have the vision for you're not sketching anything. You're painting the image with
I
watercolors
do
mostly?
I do draw beforehand,
Oh,
but
okay.
I consider that a little bit different than just free sketching.
Uh,
So I use sketching for a specific painting. So if I have a painting in mind, I will draw thumbnails. So I'll sketch out a really quick scribbly thing just to show us what it is going to be, where things will go. And I want that to be as quick and painless as possible because I'm not having fun with that part overall. It's okay. And then once I know what it's going to be, yes, I'll draw it before I paint it. But again, that's not the fun part. That's the work part where I'm just making sure everything's going to go in the right place. There are artists who have dozens of sketchbooks where they sketch and draw for fun, and they'll just draw on the fly. Whereas for me, usually I'll have these images of paintings in my mind, and I want to get to the painting part. And and so that's the fun for me.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that. All right. So let's go back to so obviously you started when you were 9, but now you know so much about the industry. You know so much about writing and publishing. You know so much about art and all of that. What's some advice that you would go back and give a person such as yourself who is an artist and a writer?
Advice for someone like me when I was younger, I knew what brought me joy, very young, but I didn't have the stability and the confidence to to keep going when I was on the right path, and I needed that. So, in the form of advice, when you find what you love, you keep doing it. And if someone tells you it's not good enough yet, or you're not there yet, or you can't do this, or you can't do that, they're not the right person. And sure, keep learning. Absolutely. Keep training yourself. But find your mentors that tell you you're doing the right thing, and and don't shy away from it, because my path to where I am right now, I'm 42 years old, and I've been doing this for most of my life, but it's been a winding, curvy path where I would be on a certain track, and I would get knocked down by disappointment, by rejection. And we know that all of the art careers, you have to learn how to take rejection. Rejection is just a lesson, and it doesn't say anything about you or your ability to succeed. Your ability to overcome rejection is what tells you that you can succeed. So,
Great advice. Great advice. So, what is next for you? What's I know you've got the graphic novel that you're working on, but what's kind of up on the near horizon?
Near Horizon. Okay, so Near Horizon, I have a science fiction series, another science fiction series.
Another one. Okay.
Yes. So I have a science fiction series. It is about a tree whisperer who is working to stop the decline of forests. And she is a linguist who has a mushroom fungal symbiote that is attached to her nervous system so that she could communicate with trees. And this novel is fully written and edited, and it is ready to publish. But what I've decided, there's also a novella that I'm currently editing. So I'm going to be releasing the novella later this year, and then after that, I'm going to be putting out the novel, and there will be a third book in the series as well.
Wow.
So that's what's next. I'll be releasing those myself and my husband through Epitome Press. That's our publishing company. Because I'm going to keep writing, and I have other books that are written as well. And so that's the next thing that I'm going to be putting out for readers.
Awesome. Awesome. That is fun. All right. So where can my listeners find more about you online?
Well, let's see. I have two different web pages. If you're looking to find me as my whole self, or you want to aim for my writing specifically, CL4's, that's FORS, author.com. And the other website is cl4sillustrator.com if
Wow.
you're specifically looking to commission me as an illustrator.
Oh, that's fast. So you do work with commissions. So if there is
Yes,
a writer out there who's looking for an award-winning, international award-winning author,
that's right.
they can go to cl4sillustrator.com, and those looking for your writing, cl4author.com. Nice and easy.
Yes. I do take commissions, and I've done book covers. I just recently did a logo for Martin Shoemaker. So yeah, any illustration projects that they want to talk to me about, ask me, and I can probably do it.
Awesome. Cherrie, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Thank you. It's been so fun.
There were so many things that inspired me in this conversation with Cherrie. And I love, one of the things I really love is that in a lot of endeavors, she's self-taught, but then, and she talks about this, take the creative jump and then stepping back and understanding when you need to learn more, getting the formal instruction, and that it's just part of the process. Like, at the age of 9, she's making this magazine. She's like, okay, I can write stories, I can write poetry, I can do illustrations. I'll get my siblings to, I'll pay them for their work and get this industrial spirit, which I actually really, really appreciate that. I love also that she sees herself and represents herself as both a writer and an illustrator, that they're both, two parts of the same coin. And obviously, she's not a coin, she's a multi-sided die. Like a Dungeons and Dragons sort of, maybe a 20-sided die. But, we'll just, to simplify things, we'll call her the two-sided coin. But I love that. She's just embracing all of that under the brand of CL4. CL4's author, CL4's illustrator. But the last thing I wanted to reflect on was the advice that Cherrie gave. And this is just something I want to drive home. It's something I've talked about a lot, and I'm so glad she said it. If you see the video when she's saying it, you can see my eyes light up. I probably put my hand over my heart. She said, when you find what you love, keep doing it. Keep learning and find the right mentors, and don't shy away from it. And there's such value in that. So much of our lives are things we have to do, things that we're forced to do, things we're required to do. When you find something that really resonates with you, with who you are, with your heart, your mind, your soul, if you can keep doing that, there's something special and powerful about that. I know how lucky I am when I consider for most of my adult life that I've gotten to do the things that I treasure and value the most. And many, many years were spent working in sales, and I'm not a salesperson, but working in sales, I didn't see it as a salesperson, a retail salesperson. It was a bookseller. And it was engaging in a product I so believe in, so incredibly powerfully. I mean, there are dozens of crappy, low-paying retail jobs that you can have. And the crappy, low-paying retail job I had, even when I was managing bookstores, because it was pretty much, I was making less than minimum wage when you consider the hours I put in, I cherished the work I was doing. I found what I loved, and I kept doing it because it was in a realm that I was so passionate about. Maybe I sacrificed, like I potentially could have gotten higher paying jobs of things I didn't like, but I consider myself very lucky that I was able to work for decades in a really crappy low paying job and managed to be able to earn a living doing that. The times were tough. Times were not always good. And it's been in the last, I guess, 15 to 20 years or so, I've been fortunate that the income has actually been relatively not worry-free, but it hasn't been the dry toast weeks where you couldn't afford to buy butter or margarine. And, a 99-cent loaf of bread was pretty much what you were eating. I've been very lucky. Lucky that I am able to earn an income that I'm comfortable, that I can, if I want to go and buy a beer or I want to go out for dinner, it's not much of a worry. I have access to that. I realize how fortunate and how lucky I am. But on top of just the income, I'm very, very lucky. The people I have in my life who love me and who I love, and that I get to do something that I so appreciate and love and just feel that this is where I'm meant to be. So yes, I took Cherrie's advice. When you find what you love and keep doing it, I took that to heart. As you can tell, I strongly agree, because if you're lucky enough to find something that you love and you're lucky enough to be able to do it, that is a gift, and I will never take that for granted. Well, that's it for this reflection. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast, you can leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. That always helps, as authors know. Reviews always help. Or share this episode or any episode that you've enjoyed and found value in. Share it with someone that you think would benefit from it, because that also helps too. But as always, thank you so much for listening, for letting me and Cherrie bend your ear. I will be back next episode. So until next week, and until next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.